Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Thailand. Another beautiful, rainy, wet season day. The jungle is looking lush, the trails are muddy, and the red clay is a nightmare, just the way we like it. Anyway, I have been riding around the jungle on this very sexy, very new CRF450RL, which is clearly not my bike, but I've been lucky enough to ride around on it a bit. So I thought I would have a little bit of a chat about it and what I like about it, and maybe also a little bit of a comparison with my beloved KTM 690 Enduro R, which is a 2012, so a lot older, but also a dual sport bike. The KTM is stuck in Cambodia. I am stuck in Thailand, so I can't put it in the video for you today. I obviously miss it. My heart is breaking. But anyway, little bit of consolation. CRF 450 Rally. What have we got going on? It's mostly stock, only 600 Ks on this bike. We have the rack, which is super useful because, it's not big and wide like, the more classic racks. You can still run a rackless luggage setup on it, but it lets you add a nice little rotor packs down here, extra 3 litres of fuel, which you may be needing, seeing as it has only a 7.5 litre fuel tank. What else? Oh yes, we have the Yoshimura RSV4 exhaust, which scares all the villagers. Super loud. I have ordered the decibel killer because we've been giving too many chickens aneurysms as we ride through the village. But soon we'll have that sorted out. I've ridden the bike before and after the new exhaust went on it, and it's made a really noticeable difference to like power delivery. Like the bike just wants to wheelie now. It also feels like a bit too snatchy and it's backfiring a lot. I think we need to maybe remap the ECU a little bit because the air fuel mixture is maybe not quite right now that we've changed the exhaust, but definitely noticeably more power. Yeah, anyway, let's talk a little bit about CRF 450 Rally and my KTM 690 Enduro R. Actually, I think this is a valid comparison. Let's compare the CRF 450RL with my old KTM 690 Enduro. My old KTM is a 2012, right? So I've obviously done a lot of kilometers on that bike and thought a lot about dual sports, about this compromise between it being an off-road bike, but also, being able to go anywhere and having long service intervals. And basically, the question is, can you ride around the world on it and not be stuck on the bitumen all the time? So let's compare them. All right, so CRF 450, obviously it's about 450 cc's and small engine, going to give you less power. The difference is reasonably significant. It's about 20-25 horsepower less than the old 690. So the CRF 450 gives you about just under 42 horsepower, I think. Whereas the 2012 690 Enduro, depending who you ask, is going to give you somewhere between like 68 and 63 horsepower. I don't know exactly what that number is going to be really, because like who's going to put an enduro bike on a dyno? Certainly not me, but you get the picture. Anyway, so off that bigger engine, you're obviously getting a bit more horsepower, but it's also a little bit heavier, but not much heavier. Okay, so your CRF 450 here, the 2020, it's weighing in at about 125 kilos, and that's with all your fluids, except for a full tank of fuel. Got to keep your bike moist, guys. Anyway, and so the 690 Enduro, if you put in all your fluids and you don't put in your tank of fuel, it's going to be about 140 kilos. So yeah, like a 15, 16 kilo difference in weight, which is actually not that much when you consider the difference in horsepower. Power to weight ratio, I think KTM are winning out here, as you'd expect. Ground clearance though, this I reckon, so the 450, again, as you would expect, is more dirt biased than the 690 Enduro, even though they're both kind of trying to be dual sports. So this bike has a couple of centimeters more ground clearance. You get about 3.5 centimeters more ground clearance on the Honda than you do on the old 690. And the seat height is also taller on the CRF. It is, what's the seat height? I actually did my homework, which I really don't do very often. I usually just get on the bike and I'm like, oh, this feels like fun. But anyway, let's see, what's the seat height? So the seat height on this bike is officially 94.5 centimeters, and the KTM is officially 91 centimeters. So that's just a little bit of a difference. But I will say this from experience, it might only be like a couple of centimeters difference in official seat height, but the KTM is a wider bike because, I mean, again, like bigger engine, bigger fuel tank, you've got more shit that you're trying to stuff into that package. So it's a wider bike, which makes it feel a lot taller than this bike. This bike is super skinny in, classic CRF style. What I will say is, like, I've never really been one to complain about seats. I'm usually like, well, you shouldn't really be sitting on it that much. It shouldn't be sitting like a sack of potatoes. You should be like up on the pegs and riding the bike. But I will say that the skinniness of the CRF450, it means it's a lot easier to get your foot down, so you don't notice the height so much and you get nice ground clearance at the same time. But the skinny seat, it's a bit hard on the old labia, I tell you. Anyway, so in case you're wondering, I'm 165 centimeters tall, and I had no trouble riding this CRF. Whereas I found it took a lot more technique for me to feel comfortable riding around on the 690 Enduro, especially in uneven terrain. So yeah, so it's only a couple of centimeters difference, but even though the CRF is technically taller, it actually is much easier for shorter riders to handle, I think. What else do we want to talk about? Fuel capacity. Oh yeah, I mentioned, or I don't know if I mentioned, I can't remember. My brain is a sieve. We've got this rack here with an extra 3 litre in the rotor packs, which is a lovely little addition, because the CRF fuel tank is like 7.5 litres. So that's not really that much. The KTM stock tank is 12 litres. Again, really not much. On my Enduro, which is in Cambodia, and so I can't actually show it to you today because I'm in Thailand and the borders are all closed, which is a tragedy, but I'm getting distracted anyway. On my Enduro, I have an auxiliary tank as well, which is an extra 14 litres. So totally unnecessary in Asia as well, but maybe useful in places like Australia and Uzbekistan. So if you go to Uzbekistan on your CRF 450 or maybe Mongolia, I don't know, you're going to probably want to strap some rotor packs to it. You can get rally kits and everything for this bike, but I don't really see the point of that. I mean, it's trying to be an off-road bike and you stick the rally kit on it and then you just can't see the front wheel and then you go over like big bumps and you smack yourself in the face with the fairing. So unless you're actually going to run a road book, I would be like, don't waste your money. But that's just me. Everybody, get out there, live your best life. Here's the thing though. For me, this is the clincher for a bike like this. It's service interval. So this bike is really, at heart, it's a dirt bike, and it has dirt bike service intervals. It's like 1,000 kilometers to change your oil. 690 Enduro, 10,000 kilometers. Not that I leave it that long because oil is cheap and engines are expensive, but you can see like service intervals, maintenance. This bike is a whole different kettle of fish. So if you're like looking for a dual sport to sort of ride around the world or something like that, yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it would be better to compare the CRF 450 to something like the KTM 500 EXC. Then you're getting more into like comparable service intervals and I guess a comparable focus on off-road performance. But yeah, so this is a sexy little bike. And here's the other caveat that I want to say. I'm not very big, right? I mean, as you can see, I'm like huge and big and strong and muscly at 165 centimeters tall, and I weigh about 55 kilos, and I have no muscle. Like, I have no muscle to save my life, really. So I noticed that this bike is, you know, for me as a dirt bike, I wouldn't choose it as my dirt bike because I think it's a bit heavy for the single track. I noticed that riding it when I'm riding off road, I'm working just that bit harder. And when you drop it, it's the difference between just like, I've been riding the gas. So before I was just like, oh, I'm just going to pick it up and I drop it, and then I go to pick it up and nothing happens. Gravity is a bitch. So I can pick it up, obviously, it just takes a bit more effort. So that is something that I notice that's important to me. So I'd be like, look for riding around on the single track. If that's what you care about, I wouldn't be getting this bike. Also, for riding around the world, I probably wouldn't be getting this bike because I don't think that your power to weight ratio, for example, is good enough to justify changing your oil every 1,000 kilometers. So yeah, that's my perspective. However, if you are a giant, if you're like some 6'2" giant, and lucky you, good for you if you are, then maybe this is the dirt bike for you. Because like my friends, they ride this old KTM here, and they complain. They're just like, look, it's nice and light, but no power, no power. And yeah, sure enough, like it's got no power. And when you're 55 kilos, you can get away with more of not having power. And when you're not 55 kilos, maybe you're 110 and you're a big giant person with lots of muscles, maybe this is the bike for you. I don't know. But anyway, that's my review. I had a bundle of fun on this bike. Oh, another note on, I was talking about the upgraded exhaust and also power delivery being really, really snatchy. Well, I rode the bike before the new exhaust and I rode after the new exhaust. So before the new exhaust, power delivery less snatchy. I feel like it's gained some horsepower, definitely, with the new exhaust. It definitely feels a lot different, but like I say, it's power delivery not smooth at all. Also some backfiring going on and occasionally cutting out. So I think the engine needs to be maybe remapped to take account of the new exhaust. And then after that, I might have some really good things to say about, power delivery and the power curve and such like. I don't know. So leaving that open, I am looking forward to seeing what it's like to actually put a few more miles on this bike and really get to know it. And yeah, I'll keep you updated.